All right. In case we have anyone new joining us for the first time, these are our bi-monthly meetings where we talk all things related to business sustainability. Frequently, we have a bit of updates and sort of forecast of what's coming from my program or our program, the Partners for Clean Environment program, but also have always try and save space at the end for group sharing on what's going on in your community, what's going on with your business community, and sustainability in your community that would be good for folks in attendance. With that said, today I'm going to give a preview of our rebate changes coming for next year. 4-slide, really only 3-slide recap of the 2 weeks of the climate change conference and how I think that's relevant to us. An update on our climate action challenge and the role for the folks on the call to help participate in that. And then related to that, any questions that if we have any chamber representatives that have questions about the greenhouse gas inventory reporting requirement for their Boulder County Economic Vitality grants, I'm happy to take questions on that. Before we dive in, are there any other agenda items that folks want to be sure that we cover today? Okay, well, we'll have some time at the end also for things that come up, so or updates and things that folks want to share, so you can share then too. So let's start with our rebates, and I will just pull this up and share my screen. So these aren't final yet. We still need to run them by a couple of folks and finalize them, but this is sort of what we're looking at, and we will share in terms of timeline, hopefully, well, next Thursday, Boulder County's budget gets approved, and I hope by the week after to be able to share these rebates out so folks know what changes are coming in January in terms of the PACE rebates. So let's run through what we're thinking now. Refrigeration and food service, this is our small business equity program where we cover 70% of the project costs for equipment that's older than 2005 for businesses that are under 2,500 square feet. No real plan changes there aside from continuing to streamline that program, make it easier. We had really strong participation again this year, and yeah, we're looking to keep it going. So no significant plan changes there aside from the minor tweaks along the way to make it better. Lighting, we have for our rebates for lighting, we have all these different buckets. You don't need to know this. We just take the proposed lighting changes and we'll estimate the rebates for businesses. But a couple of changes we're making here is a little bit of a simplification. We used to have a separate amount if you had a T12 fixture, or that's a T12, the fat fluorescent tubes. Then if you had a different type of fixture, we're just going to do away with that, partially because of what's in red at the bottom there. We're also reducing our plan to reduce our amount for LED replacement lamps. So those, your screw-in bulbs, they've gotten really cheap. And then the last thing is something that we've shared out via email, and we want to push more. But Excel is now offering free replacement of fluorescent tubes to LED for any business that has under 100 kW of demand. And so that's a measure of the max amount of electricity that they'll draw at any given time. And it varies what businesses qualify, but picture your small business, they're likely to qualify if they're in Excel territory. So that's a pretty awesome program. We got a little sort of advance notice about that, and we have been promoting that to businesses through our network. We are expecting that program to continue next year, and we are expecting to share it more widely. And so I think that would be a great thing for everyone to promote to your business communities of like, hey, if you're a small business, you can get your fluorescent lighting replaced for free. They don't change out the whole fixture. They just take out the tubes and replace them with LED tubes. So if someone wanted, a nicer looking fixture or whatever, this isn't going to be the program for them. They can still use our rebates. They can still use Excel's other rebates. But for, just the energy savings, and maybe they've got burnout bulbs, this is an awesome program that, they sign up, we can get them signed up, and then the contractor will come out and schedule them and do all the work for them. So not only is the equipment's free, but the labor's free as well. So really cool thing, and definitely something we want to push more next year. Solar, not planning any changes at the moment. So as a reminder, we offer a general rebate of $1 per watt up to $15,000. We also have an additional $5,000 we offer for nonprofits that serve low-income individuals. And then in the city of Boulder, for nonprofits, there's an additional incentive on top of that. So for nonprofits in the city of Boulder, they can get all three incentives, which is quite a lot and a very good deal. So I definitely encourage particularly nonprofits in the city of Boulder to take advantage, but really businesses anywhere. We are continuing our requirement that for these sort of larger dollar rebates, that businesses and nonprofits have to do a greenhouse gas inventory with us, and we're encouraging them to join our Climate Action Challenge. We had some discussion about eventually phasing this out as the grid is getting cleaner. Both PRPA, Efficiency Works, Longmont Grid, and Excel's grid are expected to have 85% or thereabouts reduction in emissions by the end of the decade, and the individual greenhouse gas savings from putting a solar system on a building in 2030 is diminished when the grid is already that clean. But for now, we're planning to keep them, and the federal tax credit stays at 26% until the end of next year, unless it changes. It keeps getting changed a lot, which is good in that it gets extended. And we're also watching and waiting to see what comes out of the Build Back Better in relation to solar. Cooling. So this is just for air conditioning. It's a lot of numbers here and acronyms, but the takeaway is we have historically offered just our sort of a single cooling rebate, whereas Excel and Efficiency Works both offer tiered rebates and incentives. And so we're adopting that model for our cooling, and which will mean a larger amount of cooling equipment will be eligible, with one exception. It will be at a lower amount than what we're currently offering. So the 18 SEER, which is a measure of the seasonal energy efficiency ratio, that'll get a higher rebate amount as currently proposed, but everything else will be lower than what we're currently offering for the different system sizes. So takeaway is more equipment qualifies, still good rebates, and as you can see, still doing a good job covering the incremental cost of the higher efficiency equipment. We are planning to add in heat recovery ventilation and energy recovery ventilation rebates. I have a diagram here for anyone who's unfamiliar, but basically, rather than in the summertime blowing all of your air-conditioned air outside of the building when you want to bring in fresh air and losing all of that cool air. You can exchange the heat with your cool indoor air and incoming hot outdoor air to reduce the temperature of the hot outdoor air before it comes in. And that makes your overall system more efficient. There are a variety of different ways to do this. This diagram represents a model you would put into your home. And then in the winter, you can do the same thing. So, keeping the heat that you've put into your building into the building rather than exhausting it with your exhaust air out of the building. So we're not quite certain what the rebates for this will look like yet, but they may look something like this. This is a model from another utility that we're looking at, but just know that that is something that will be out there, and it pairs really well with electrifying your building and reducing the heating and cooling demands for your mechanical cooling equipment. On electrification, we continue to offer $500 a ton for heat pumps. So these are devices that can both heat and cool the building simultaneously, and can get a building off of natural gas, which is increasingly important. As our grid gets cleaner, and ultimately we need to get all of our buildings off of natural gas for heating. We also continuing to offer our $500 unit for heat pump water heaters. No one has yet taken us up on that, so please help us in sharing that around. We're also considering a incentive for electrification studies. So, if a building owner is considering, getting off of natural gas and electrifying their heating, part of the process of that is, conducting an engineering study of, okay, what would that take? How much would it cost? What would be the ongoing costs, et cetera. So there's, it's not just as easy as like, oh, well, we'll just, pick that unit off the shelf at Home Depot and we'll put it in and it'll work. So we're considering an incentive to help building owners, even consider electrification, but we haven't figured out what that might be yet. We're also considering adding a bonus for removing and replacing of natural gas equipment. So, boilers, furnace, water heater, cooking equipment, etc. This is something that our peer program, Energy Smart, on the residential side already does. And I think it's a great, would be a great incentive. Also, would be a great, clear communication tool for, like, hey, if you electrify your equipment, you can get an additional incentive. So that's something we're thinking about as well. And then we're also thinking about insulation. We already offer window film incentives, but we haven't historically offered insulation incentives. But insulation, partially because it's just so hard to do on commercial buildings and happens so rarely. But as folks are thinking about electrifying their heating, the thermal envelope of the building, how efficient it is at keeping heat in and keeping heat out is really important. And so we're thinking about starting to offer this as well. And this is an example of the incentives that Efficiency Works currently offers in Longmont. So that's what we're thinking about for rebate changes for next year. Like I said, stay tuned. We still need to finalize things, but those are kind of the general things we're thinking about. Any questions about those changes?
Hi,
Okay.
Zach.
Yeah.
This is Bernice. I was wondering if that 2005 mark will move to 2007 or 2006, since we are 2022 next
Right.
year.
Yeah. Good question. No, it won't. 2005 is the threshold of when the Department of Energy changed efficiency standards. So it's not really so much about the age of the equipment, and it's more about, what was the minimum efficiency that equipment was required to have at the time it was manufactured. And so, even as time is progressing, we won't change that because it's pegged to a level of efficiency that was set in 2005. But good question. Okay, cool. So moving on, I'm sure folks were at least tangentially aware of the Conference of the Parties 26, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change conference that was happening last month. And I just thought I would give a brief update on it and how it affects us. So I've been to a couple of these. They're pretty interesting. And yeah, interesting and depressing and amazing all at once. I mean, a huge number of people attend them. You have pretty much all of the nations in the world represented. Over 100 world leaders attended this one. But usually, I think there's like of the 190 some countries in the world, like 180 participate in them in some form. And it's, a lot of theater and a lot of drama and a lot of late nights. But they're very interesting. I highly recommend if anyone wants a really weird vacation, go attend one. They're super interesting. But so what happened at this one? So some good things happened, increasing the financial aid to poorer countries for climate change and supporting clean energy, a commitment to phase out fossil fuel subsidies without a date set, which is like not really a commitment, but at least, progress, I guess, that we're talking about it. Diverting investment into away from fossil fuels and into renewable energy, phase down, but not phase out. That was a big sort of drama at the end of the conference, was the language change there of coal, which is responsible for 40% of CO2 emissions worldwide. And then, as ever, they will meet again next year and pledge further emissions reduction cuts. There's also a commitment to stop deforestation by 2030 by countries that represent 85% of the world's forested land. And a subgroup pledged to cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030 as well. So all of that is, good news, maybe not as fast as we would have liked, but progress. The downside is that we know that emissions need to fall by 45–50% by the end of this decade if we're going to stay within the 1.5 degree Celsius threshold of warming, which is widely recognized as the upper limit of what would be safe for our society and economy and people worldwide. But based on the commitments at the COP26, it's far more likely that we're on track to see 2.4 or 2.7 degrees Celsius, which is obviously not what we need. Also, depressingly, about as much CO2 has been emitted since the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change started in 1992, as was emitted in all time prior to that. So while we've been talking about this, we've emitted as much global warming pollution as we had at the moment that we started talking, as the world started, negotiating around this, which is, it's not great. Which gets us to, not enough is being done. I mean, this chart was from May of this year, but the Conference of the Parties didn't really change it much. This is the the orange color here is the trajectory we're currently on in terms of our annual carbon emissions worldwide, and that would lead to about a 5-degree Fahrenheit rise by the end of the century, which was 2.4 to 2.7 degrees Celsius on the previous slide. So pretty much the same there. And this blue track is where we need to be. So the reason I wanted to share this today is really to just talk about this gap and reiterate again that there are good things. Some good things came out of COP26. There are some good things in the Build Back Better package, at the federal level, and we'll see what comes out of that. But the end of it is that we're neither of those initiatives is on track to have us where we need to be, and so more action locally is needed. As ever, we all need to do more, and it's really hard to figure out what to do. But that is one of the reasons why we have launched our Climate Action Challenge, which, let me pull that up. And so this is live on our website now. We sent it out to all of our 136 businesses that had previously been certified with us, and we've got some good engagement so far. We're going to keep following up with them, and we're working on a larger communications campaign and launch for this starting in January. And we will definitely be asking you to help us promote this to the businesses in your communities. But basically, as I said before, I think to this group, what we're asking for is increased ambition and engagement with our local business community around measuring their greenhouse gas emissions and setting goals. And we will be with them every step of the way to help accomplish all those things. And so what we're asking for in the challenge is to do a greenhouse gas inventory, which we will help businesses do, identify opportunities to reduce emissions and make a plan, which we will help businesses do, and set goals that result in a meaningful impact towards a science-based target. And a science-based target, broadly speaking, would be a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by the end of the decade. And we will help businesses do this too, as well as track and report their progress. So we're asking businesses to sign up here. Just sign up is all they need to do at first, and that's all we're asking for. If they want to put in their logo, we would love that. And then we will be following up with them and helping them through each of those steps along the way. But the hope is to really sort of build a movement here of local businesses committing to climate action, beyond sort of the one-off upgrades, when equipment fails, et cetera. And Elizabeth put in the chat, pointing out here that this is currently being translated into Spanish as well. So Berenice, I know you were going to ask us, so we're working on it. We should have that up in a couple of weeks here. Yvette.
Hey, Zach, nice to see you. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
One of the big challenges we have is that a lot of our small businesses in particular are renting their space and can't make infrastructure changes. And there really isn't a necessarily big drive to talk to the more commercial real estate owner, broker environment. I'm wondering if y'all have thought about that in terms of a strategy, or have already kind of addressed that.
Yeah.
And I apologize if that had already been something you did.
No. It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, 60% of local businesses rent their space, we estimate, or I have heard. So it's the majority, of businesses we're working with. Definitely, it's a challenge, and there is no like anything with climate change, there's no like simple thing. We just do this and it takes care of it. But some of the strategies we're looking at are, businesses can reduce their emissions from their purchased electricity via renewable energy credits. And there are a couple of programs available through the utilities or through the voluntary market that they can use there. So that's one option. We're also excited to use this as an opportunity and engagement tool for tenant businesses to talk to their landlords and say, hey, reducing our emissions is important to us, and we've got an inventory, and this is where we're at, and this is where we'd like to be, and we know upgrading our lighting would really help us towards this, or electrifying the building is something we'd be interested in. Is that something that we can work on together, with you, our landlord? Those aren't really conversations that are happening in that way, but we've seen businesses have a couple of them, a couple of businesses have them with their landlords, and we're hoping to foster more of that and facilitate that. We also have Denise Grimm on our team, who pretty much exclusively works with property owners. So we're coming at it from the tenant business side and also the property owner side. So that's another approach. But yeah, go ahead, Yvette.
Yeah, I maybe as food for thought, because this is so many great options. I'm wondering, sort of do our part. I'm wondering if there might be a stronger conversation with the Boulder. I'm sorry to talk about Boulder, but the Commercial Brokers Association through the chamber. I'm wondering if we could kind of like even have an exploratory conversation with the leadership of, is there something the industry as owners might commit to? Because I think it's hard. The tenants don't tend to have leverage, and maybe that's just unique to our community. But I just wanted to offer that up. Happy to follow up with you separately and maybe talk to John. So thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that idea, Yvette, and definitely want to follow up with you and John about that. I think coming at this from both sides is necessary. And I mean, you could imagine a scenario where, I mean, we do have some very forward thinking property owners here in the county that have made a lot of upgrades, but if you like, that could be a real draw, right, for tenants too, of like, hey, we're doing this, we're making these changes to our property to help you in your goals, or to help you in your contribution to reducing climate change. So yes, I think both and if we can get the ask from the tenant without a lot of leverage, but at least sort of get that question out there and put it on the radar of property owners, and then also come at it from the other direction, I think is important. And then if they can hear it from not only PACE, but from the city too, right? Of this is something that the city would support property owners or encourage property owners in our city to do, or from the chamber as well. And we'll have more specific asks around that coming soon once we have our sort of full communications plan around this. Any other questions or great ideas like that had? Okay. So yeah, that's that. And then sort of related to this, for the chambers on the call and SBDC, if anyone has any questions about the requirement that Boulder County put into our funding this year that you do a greenhouse gas inventory, I'm happy to take those questions now. Or you can email me.
Zach, you mentioned that your office is willing. I'm sorry, everybody. It's Yvette again. That your office is willing to aid people with that. Do you have any feel for the time commitment? This is it's always a hard time for businesses, but
Yeah.
There's so much pull on their attention. I just want to be thoughtful about that. Do you have any appreciation of like how long it takes to do an inventory?
To do an inventory, yeah. So it really depends on the depth. And we are starting out like as simple as possible. And if businesses want to go further, we will go further with them. But the only thing we're asking for in our inventory is your natural gas use on site and your electricity consumed on site. Um, and to do that, there's a couple of different ways. If you're in Excel territory, you can create a account with EPA's Portfolio Manager, and you can link your Excel account to that, and the data will automatically be loaded in, and then you will have your inventory done, and you just need to take the steps to link up those accounts. Excel publishes a guide on how to do that. We can help businesses through it. It takes a couple of days for everything to actually happen, but it's probably only 30 minutes of their time, maybe 45 minutes of their time, just to log into the accounts, create the accounts, do the linkage, etc. Outside of Excel territory, we are offering, if they give us 12 months of their utility data, we will compile that for them. We will run it through the EPA's small generator calculator and give them their inventory results back. So they just need to send us their utility bills. We do the work, and then we tell them what the results were. There are also some other tools that are even sort of simpler than that. University of California, Berkeley publishes they call their Cool Climate Calculator, which is sort of a silly name, but in about 5-10 minutes, a business can go through and just use some assumptions. If they have data, they can enter in more information, and it'll give them a number. Obviously that is not as strong or as accurate of an inventory as some of the other methods. And then if a business, our hope is that, we get to that stage, and for some businesses, that'll be, as far as they go with their inventory, and we'll talk about that and we'll move forward from there with them. For others, we hope they say, well, what about, our employee commute, or what about, the shipping we do, or what about, all of the goods and services we purchase. Those should also be included in a full inventory, and we're happy to work on those. But the starting point is like, let's just look at your electricity and your natural gas, because we know folks are busy, and our sort of sneaky plan is, once we get folks starting to talk about this, if we can make the initial conversation easy enough, our hope is that we will get those what about this, what about that questions, and then we can delve deeper for the folks who want to. I see a couple of hands. Berenice?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I think you already answered one of my questions, that I think, yeah, it's easier that businesses provide us the accounts, and then advisors can, do all the paperwork and all the calculations. My other question is, for those home-based businesses, can they participate if they don't have how do you call it, brick and mortar?
Yeah. Yes. And I would recommend for them probably the Cool Climate Calculator out of UC Berkeley. It's probably the better option for them, because it includes, it goes beyond just electricity and natural gas, which is tough to suss out for home-based business. Like, you were going to heat and cool your home anyhow, so how much of that is really attributable to your business, and how much should you attribute, and those questions get a little bit gray, and the Cool Climate Calculator, I think, is a good solution for really small home-based businesses.
Okay, thank you. Especially I was thinking on landscapers, because they may not have an office, but they use equipment that uses fossil fuel.
Right, and for and again, like, that's where, like we want to start with what's really easy. But yeah, you think about it, yeah, a business like landscapers, most of their emissions are not, from their office, right? If they even have one. And so we would want to then follow up with them and say, okay, let's talk about, your vehicles and, the miles you drive per year, the fuel efficiency of your vehicles. Let's talk about the equipment you use, how much gas are you using, and then we can come up with, a more accurate estimate for them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I saw another hand earlier. Michelle, did you have a question? Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, cool. So stay tuned on this too. This was another, it's already out there, it's going. Folks can go to our website now, click on the Climate Action Challenge, sign up and join, and we'll follow up with them. But like I said, we'll have a larger push coming next month, and we'll have requests of you to help us promote and share. And I will share out the slides that I sent today, as well as the recording. And I think that is the end of my agenda. So last thing was just anything anyone else wants to share with the group, what you have going on with business sustainability in your community, or things you'd like for us to know.
Zach, I wondered if it's okay to share that we may have a to-go compostable containers program for Longmont businesses next year. So stay tuned for future details. And I know there is one happening in Lafayette as well.
Yeah, that's right. We're currently offering, gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. I think $200 worth of more sustainable. There's no such. The only sustainable to-go wear is reusable to-go wear, which we're working on in the city of Boulder. But we're offering environmentally preferable single-use takeout items to small restaurants in Lafayette currently, and yeah, Longmont's considering it next year. Louisville is also looking at it for next year. With also, I'm from what I've heard, expecting that Longmont, Lafayette, and Louisville will all be contributing some additional funds to hire a fellow intern, paid intern, we call him the fellow here at PACE, to help extend the business sustainability work there and support their green business and sustainable business programs. So just for folks to know that we'll have a little bit extra support in those communities next year. If all the conversations that seem pretty definite, turn out to be true, which I'm sure they will. Any other updates?
I'm also putting in the chat our upcoming event, the Business Sustainability Awards for Longmont. So if you guys want to come, will be a vaccination proof. Everything can change. So far it's in person with the vaccination verification program. So if you want to join and listen some mariachi and celebrating businesses for being sustainable, so join us next year.
Awesome.
I put that info in the chat. And thank you, Matt and Pace, for supporting this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Barry.
Yeah, we're gonna award many of the participants of the business equity program. So that's really exciting.
Bernice, where's that being held?
It's in the Laguna Mexican restaurant in Longmont. It's in Prospect. I don't know if you have visited, but they have mariachi every Friday from 6 to 9. So
Okay.
you guys, food is amazing. I will update that on the invite.
Good to know.
Great. All right. Well, short one this month, and good to connect with everyone. I will send out the recording, the slides, and ultimately the finalized rebates when we have them. So, I'll send up the provisional rebate changes slides now, but please don't share them until we get them finalized, and I'll give you the go ahead and let you know that we're ready to, officially announce the rebate changes. And then please stay tuned for more communication on the Climate Action Challenge, and definitely requests of all of you to help us promote that and share it, and see if we can close that gap between where our emissions are and where we need to be. So thanks all. Have a great holiday season, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Zach. See you guys.